Wars, battles, conflicts have been a huge part of human history. It seems at any one time, whether it's for the defense of a territory or a beautiful woman, we're always fighting about something. Of course, it comes as no surprise that victorious battles are won with amazing planning and great leaders. However, there are battles that, despite having legions at a general's command, and it seems like victory may be certain, but then their fates were sealed when heaven chose to step in and drastically tip the balance to one side. So in today's video, we're gonna count down to history's 5 most decisive battles that were won by divine intervention. We'll start off with number 5, the Battle of Bulge. One of the bloodiest battles during World War II happened in the Belgian town of Bastogne in 1944, where American soldiers were cornered by the German army in a surprise attack. 12,000 American soldiers were encircled and trapped by the Germans, and it was up to U.S. Army General George Patton to break the siege and rescue the soldiers, promising that he would grease up his tanks with the guts of the Nazi soldiers. A plan was already in place, but unfortunately for Patton, the weather had been relentlessly unforgiving. For an entire month, torrential rain pounded Belgium, and the chances of Patton's troops marching into Bastogne were slowly being swept away by the waters. And all Patton needed was really 24 hours to send in the Third Army to storm the town, rescue the 12,000 soldiers, and tear down the Nazi defenses. Since no amount of screaming and cursing at the sky could stop the rains, Patton had to resort to an unconventional approach by commissioning Third Army chaplain Colonel James O'Neill to draft a prayer for him, which he then distributed to his troops on wallet-sized cards. For the next few days, Patton ordered his troops to recite the prayer as they waited for the rains to let up. Whether or not Patton's unorthodox approach worked and convinced the rain gods to stop, we'll never know, but the weather did clear and his troops were given just enough time to break through the Nazi encirclement, save the trapped American troops, and reclaim Bastogne for the Allied forces. And no matter what the opinion is about the events surrounding that battle, it was undoubtedly one of George Patton's finest hours in the Second World War. Number 4, the War of 1812. When a fledgling United States declared war against the British in 1812, things could not get any worse, most especially after the Americans burned down what is now present-day Toronto. However, overwhelmed by British forces, the tide seemed to be against the United States when, on August 24, 1814, the British closed in on Washington, D.C. after breaking through the Americans' last defense at Bladensburg. With the states of Maryland put to a blaze by the British, then President Madison had to flee for safety with the American Constitution and the Declaration of Independence in tow, just in time for when British forces stormed the White House, the Capitol, sacking and burning everything in sight. But in a sudden twist of fate, the weather began to turn, and one of America's most destructive tornadoes in history touched down in the middle of the battle, wiping out soldiers, civilians, and artillery in its wake. Upon the sight of the destructive storm, the British had no other choice but to retreat and leave the nation's capital. While the tornado and the rains it brought scared the redcoats and saved the nation in its most decisive battle, it has also left hundreds of Americans either dead or homeless due to its sheer destructive power. Number 3, the failed Persian siege. Greece is no stranger to the occasional invading army and the bloody war against neighboring countries. With its trove of knowledge and wealth, the ancient Greeks have always been one of history's prime targets when it comes to being taken over by hostile forces. Among them are the Persians, Greece's most formidable foe. In 492 BC, Greece came dangerously close to crumbling under the forces of the Persian army. Led by the Persian general Mardonius, Persia's naval fleet was able to sail close to the island of Athos. Fortunately for the people of Athos, Poseidon was on their side. As if on cue, a wild hurricane swept the sea and in the blink of an eye capsized and destroyed the Persian fleet, killing 20,000 soldiers. It was believed that it was hubris that brought this catastrophic end to the Persian fleet, as the weather was already proving to be fickle, and by the time they reached Athos, the rains have turned into full-fledged storms. And while there have been many attempts by the Persians to set foot on Greece by way of sea, this particular one may have succeeded if not for the winds blowing in the favor of the ancient Greeks. Number 2, the Protestant wind. The political relations between Protestant England and Catholic Spain were already turning sour, and if not for the urging of church leaders during the 16th century, Spain may have saved herself from utter humiliation. In one desperate attempt to subjugate Elizabeth I in England, King Philip II of Spain ordered the Spanish Armada to set sail to dethrone Elizabeth and claim the country in the name of the Catholic Church and the Spanish crown. Despite the fact that Spain was no match for the English naval fleet, they continued to press on, and by the time they reached the English Channel, a storm that seemingly came out of nowhere started to batter the Spanish Armada, sinking ships and driving the survivors off. Many from both sides who witnessed the event took the storms as a sign of intervention from God, as Spain was pushed back and humiliated by what history dubs as the Protestant wind, a sign that Providence greatly favored England and its Virgin Queen. Finally, number 1, the divine wind. If it weren't for a helping hand from the heavens, Japanese culture may never have existed. In 1247, the Mongol Empire have already conquered 1/3 of the globe and have cemented their power with one of the most formidable armies the world has ever seen. As the Mongol army advanced further east unopposed, their next target was bringing down the Japanese Empire and annexing it to their strongholds in China. With inferior weapons and significantly fewer troops, Japan did not stand a chance against Kublai Khan's fierce warriors and their allies. And as the Mongols sailed towards the shores of Japan with Korean allies, Japan sent as much forces as it can muster to defend its seawall. With what seems to be a losing battle, fortune turned its head towards Japan as the Mongol fleet sensed a storm brewing fast. True enough, 2 typhoons came to the rescue of the Japanese Empire and decimated Kublai Khan's rapidly advancing fleet. The violent tempest, dubbed the kamikaze or divine wind by the Japanese, left 13,000 soldiers dead, and the remaining Mongol ships were sent fleeing back to Chinese shores. But here's the question for you guys. Are these all really just coincidences? Because at least for me, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe everything happens for a reason. So maybe the Mongols weren't supposed to take over Japan. In this way, traditional Japanese culture remains intact, and that's just what the heavens want. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. See ya.